Oh, I got to do that. Okay, here we go. But I'm left-handed. It's on the wrong side. Okay, I'm calling the meeting to order. First off, I want to apologize in advance. You'll notice a little scratchy voice, and I'm sorry, but that's what I have to work with today. So what can I say? Could we call the roll, please?
Good morning, Commissioners. Commissioner Burke. Commissioner Dunn.
Present.
Commissioner Arp. Commissioner Gilmetti.
Present.
Commissioner Guardino.
Present.
Commissioner Inman.
Here.
Commissioner Kehoe.
Here.
Commissioner Van Konynenberg.
Here.
Commissioner Madaffer. Commissioner Tavaloni.
Here.
Chair Alvarado. We have a quorum.
All right, we're going to start with item number 68 today. Garth, please. Innovations in transportation. I must say that we're particularly proud of this agenda item every time, kind of sharing what's new and happening out there. So thank you, Garth.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Commissioners. Tab 68, we have Joseph Oldham, who's the director of the CalSTART San Joaquin Valley Clean Transportation Center, and he's here to present, to give us an overview of the center and the activities that is undertaken to accelerate the use of clean vehicles and fuels in the entire 8-county San Joaquin Valley region. With funding from the California Energy Commission, CalSTART opened the center in 2015. The center's goal is to accelerate the use of clean vehicles and fuels to help the region meet its air quality goals and provide technical assistance and support with acquiring funding for the San Joaquin Valley fleet within the valley for local governments, businesses, and residents. And with that, I'll turn it over to Joseph.
Good morning. It's my pleasure to be here. Had a nice drive up the 99 this morning. Didn't have too many challenges. So I'll be very brief. Again, my name is Joseph Oldham. I'm the director for the CalSTART San Joaquin Valley Clean Transportation Center. If I can get this thing to work. There we go. Okay. So these are the goals that we have for our center. Basically, it's to help address barriers towards getting alternative fuel vehicles and advanced transportation technology into the valley. We really are doing a lot of interesting projects. Here is our local office. We're in Fresno at the Fresno Chandler Executive Airport, which was Fresno's first airport, established in 1929. I have an office there, and we're looking to actually open up a second office in the northern part of the San Joaquin Valley. Modesto or Stockton are two of the areas that we're looking at right now. Our primary focus areas are promoting electric vehicles through increased workplace and public access charger deployment, innovative transit projects such as electric buses, and then we've done a few what we call our WOW projects, like deploying 13 EV ARCs. They are solar autonomous electric vehicle charging stations, completely off-grid. We've put one of those in every rural city in Fresno County at this point, and to provide charging opportunities for people living in those communities, as well as deploying the first electric aircraft for flight training operations in the United States. That'll be in Fresno County with the aircraft arriving sometime in December. And assisting fleets interested in alternative fuels, and we're particularly focused on natural gas and ultra-low NOx engines for heavy-duty trucking. We're working very closely with the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District, and it's part of their PM 2.5 plan that they've been working on now to deploy a lot more advanced ultra-low NOx trucks with natural gas versus diesel to help get the region in compliance with the federal air quality standards. So here's kind of an example of some of the work that we do working with existing programs. There's a lot of programs with energy efficiency activities going on in the San Joaquin Valley, particularly one that's funded by PG&E in Fresno that covers about a 3 to 4 county region. They go out and do business energy audits, and they're currently doing audits and evaluating opportunities for EV charging on these businesses when they do these audits. And then once we get a referral, then we work with the business owner to utilize the existing incentive programs that the Valley Air District has. And there's a lot more incentive programs that are coming along to promote electric vehicle charging infrastructure. Here's some of the projects that we've been working on with our transit operations. We're particularly with Fresno County Rural Transit. We've gotten them about $2.5 million in funding to deploy a couple of new electric buses in express routes from Coalinga and Orange Cove into Fresno, and using those innovative solar tree charging units to actually charge the buses so that the majority of the electricity for the bus operations comes from off-grid, from solar power, not from the grid. And that picture in the upper left is one of the EV ARCs. It's, again, an autonomous unit, completely off-grid. You bring it in, set it down, 5 minutes later, you're able to charge a car. And these things are amazing. They eliminate a lot of issues with permitting and challenges that we've seen in terms of getting public access charging. And there's a picture of one of the electric aircraft that will be soon flying in the valley. And those are amazing vehicles. They can fly for an hour and a half on a charge. The battery capacity is about the same as a Nissan Leaf, and they can be recharged in about 40 minutes. And when you look at the emission savings from aircraft, it's really quite amazing. Those 4 little airplanes will reduce 92 tons of carbon emissions annually from our skies, as well as about a ton of NOx emissions annually, just from their operation and replacing piston engine aircraft. Here's another example of some of the work we're doing with transit and other innovative technologies. We're helping deploy some Proterra advanced electric transit buses that were funded out from the Air Resources Board in about 4 communities in the valley, Stockton, Merced, Fresno, and Visalia. Then we're working with the U.S. Postal Service to deploy electric parcel delivery vehicles in Fresno and Stockton, as well as the Ameripride linen delivery service. They're going to be deploying electric linen delivery vehicles in Stockton, Merced, Fresno, and Bakersfield. Those projects are just now getting off the ground, and we're really excited to be working with those entities and those companies. So our current effort is, again, focused a lot on continuing the work that we've started, getting new projects going, leveraging resources, both state and local, and even federal, to try to get more resources into the San Joaquin Valley to get cleaner technology in place for all of the stakeholders here in the region. We're going to hold another Clean Transportation Summit on March 14th and 15th, and our plans are to have that at Fresno in collaboration with CSU Fresno out at the Save Mart Center. Certainly love to see all of you attend if you are able to. It would be we're looking forward to that. It's going to be a big event. And you know, we've been very successful at getting a lot of funding into the region. We've brought in about $18 million of resources into the region to date. We're looking very closely at how we integrate with a lot of the work that's going on with SB 350 to improve energy efficiency on existing buildings. And there's a huge opportunity to leverage all of that effort and deploy electric vehicles in a way that does not impact the grid. And some of the projects, all of the projects that we're working on with electric propulsion are focused on that arena. So with that, I'll leave it open for any questions. Here's my contact information, and be more than glad to talk to any of you or your staff if you have any ideas for projects in the San Joaquin Valley. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have questions?
Thank you,
Chris?
Fred.
Yes.
Great presentation. You're making such progress. CalSTART is doing a really good job with this. I just want to point out to everybody, Envision, the manufacturers of the solar arc, the portable charging devices, that's a San Diego company. They're
Yes.
doing great work. In fact, I think they have a contract with Caltrans for some things. And the aircraft idea is fantastic. Part of the challenge with electric vehicles is getting people to be aware of them. The vast majority of consumers don't know electric cars.
Right.
Even when they see them. They don't know what a charger is, even
That's
when they
right.
see them. And so things like Tesla, even if you can't afford a $100,000 car, or electric aircraft are things that excite regular consumers
Yes.
and get them more interested in the market, at least a little opening.
Yes.
You talked about your charging deployment. Can you give us just a few numbers, and what is the usage like in the smaller towns where you've done the standalone charging stations?
Well, it was very interesting. There were no electric vehicle chargers in these 13 rural cities in Fresno County before we started putting out the EV ARCs. And what we found was once the word got out that we were going to be deploying these, and Fresno County Rural Transit actually purchased these units, and it was part of their deployment of electric transit buses and electric transit vans that was prompting this deployment. Okay, so it was a very, very collaborative effort. It wasn't something that solely CalSTAR did. But once the word got out in these communities, we started getting the folks in those cities, the public works directors, the city managers, started getting calls saying, hey, when is this thing going to be here? I've got an electric car. I want to charge it. We didn't even know that electric cars were in these communities. And then we found that, oh my gosh, we put these things here and it's meeting a need that wasn't
And are you
met.
tracking the
Yes.
number of cars a day and
Yes.
all that kind of thing? Good.
Yes,
I'd love to see some of those numbers. I don't think we
Yes.
have time for that kind of detail this morning, but I see your email here. And then San Joaquin Valley has an extra cash incentive for
Yes.
purchasing electric vehicles. What's the number of cars in the valley? Do you know? Electric cars.
Oh, gosh, the number is steadily climbing.
Yeah.
It's been going up every year. I would say it's somewhere in the tens of thousands right now of cars. It's actually a pretty significant number.
And then one last thing, and maybe I should give you a call or email you, is the Plus Up program, the secondhand cars.
Yes.
Is there much interest, deployment here, activity around that?
Yes, there is. We've been working with Valley Can and Tom Knox and his team on that program. And it's really interesting. Beneficial State Bank has just got a grant from the Air Resources Board to help provide low-interest loans to low-income residents to help them with that delta. If they can't get the voucher, they still have to finance a car. Sometimes that still is a challenge. Well, Beneficial State Bank just has its new loan program. And so we're going to be collaborating with them and trying to figure out how we get more of these used EVs into the hands of consumers in these areas.
Great. Well, thank you very much for all this information. Thank you, Madam
You're
Chair.
very welcome.
Any other commissioners, any comments? Yes, Paul.
Yes, thank you. And I will second the motion, Chris, that I cannot afford a $100,000 Tesla either. The good news is they now have the 35,000
Right, as much as
vehicle,
we want one, yeah.
And that puts it into the range of more Californians, and those jobs are here, which is exciting.
Yes.
Proterra.
Yes.
Full disclosure, that is one of the 375 employers that are a part of my day job.
Okay.
But we're excited that they're here, that they are manufacturing in California and changed their headquarters to California. How are you finding the range of those vehicles as you actually deploy them? How is that going on the ground? Or have you entered the contract and they're not yet here?
Well, those specific buses are not yet here. But we are finding that where the Proterras are operating, such as at San Joaquin RTD in Stockton, they're actually doing very well. And Stockton has got, San Joaquin RTD is working on increasing the number of buses, electric buses in their fleet. We're working with them on an innovative project to use energy storage and solar power to mitigate the grid demands on the system because of the expansion of these electric buses. And we're going to be doing that very same thing with all of the agencies. We're anticipating that these buses are going to improve just like the cars are improving. I mean, the Chevy Bolt now can go 250, close to 300 miles on a charge. The battery technology is rapidly improving. The bus technology is going to benefit from all of that. And so we're going to see these vehicles become much more practical and be more applicable in the San Joaquin Valley. But our big challenge, of course, is our space. We've got 27,000 square miles. People travel a long ways, and it is a bit of a challenge here for electric propulsion, but it's making it.
Great, thank you.
I have a question on the EV ARC. Are those totally standalone? You don't have to
Yes.
have any redundancy, backup?
They are totally standalone, and they are amazing. The battery storage in those units will hold a charge, even on cloudy days, for 5 or 6 days and still provide charging for cars during the day.
So, yeah, I think, Malcolm, have you all looked at that, at some of those remote locations that we're trying to provide coverage? Because as long as you can get past the inclement weather, because we certainly don't want people to roll into one of our charging stations only to figure out we have no power to give them. But have we looked at that?
Well, we have about a dozen of them deployed around the state of California. Some of they are great. Don't let me, divert from that message. But I mean, there are some limitations in them. For example, when we had an employee use those charging stations with a Tesla, they pretty much tapped them out.
Yes.
So they only have so much capacity, but they are portable. I mean, they are easily to deploy, and they're not fast charging.
Yeah.
So it takes a while, you're there a
So,
while.
I mean, they're great if utilized in the correct fashion, but there are some limitations. to
Okay,
them. And
well,
we have
where it
about,
fits.
I think, a dozen of them deployed around the state at our facilities.
Mhm.
But I will go back and look and make sure that that's in our portfolio of consideration on our charging stations for the 30 and 30.
Well, any way we can get to the goal line in the best manner would be great.
And the good thing about Envision Solar is that they're not standing still literally with the arc itself. They've also got new designs where they're able to daisy chain the arcs together and where they can actually get a DC fast charger installed on. It takes about 3 of them if you daisy chain them together, but it will support a DC fast charger. So there's a lot of advancement, and it's the same thing with the arcs as it was with the buses, as with the cars, as with the airplanes. The battery technology, as it improves, these things are going to become much more practical. And changing out or upgrading the battery packs is relatively simple. The technology itself is going to be viable for 20 plus years.
Great.
Okay.
All right, no further questions? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you
We
very much.
appreciate it.
Appreciate your time.
Okay, next item, number 69. Garth, the draft of the California State Rail Plan.
Commissioners, tab 69 is an information item, and Kyle Gardner from the Caltrans acting chief for the Division of Rail and Mass Transportation is here this morning to provide an overview of the draft 2018 California State Rail Plan, which was released for public comment last week. Both the California State Transportation Agency and Caltrans have stated that the plan will provide a vision and strategies for California's future passenger and freight rail network. Given the draft plan was not released for public review until last week, staff plans on presenting comments on the plan for commission consideration at the December meeting. I have received assurances from Caltrans that they're still within the comment period, so we should be okay there. And with that, I'll turn it over to Kyle.
Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning, Madam Chair. I am very pleased to actually show you the final draft document, which was, as Garth mentioned, released last Wednesday for a 60-day public comment period. So the draft California State Rail Plan establishes a long-term vision for prioritizing state investment in an efficient, effective passenger and freight rail system, which supports the goals and policies of the California Transportation Plan 2040. The rail plan identifies service goals, capital costs, and a phased strategy for achieving that vision. This ambitious plan identifies a coordinated and statewide passenger rail network that will get Californians where they want to go, when they want to go, and enhance the movement of goods by rail to support California's industries and the economy. To take a step backwards, I'll describe the purpose of the state rail plan. As I mentioned, it establishes that strategic vision for a statewide rail network. There are 2 statutory requirements for a state rail plan. The first is a federal statutory requirement under PREA, the Passenger Rail Investment and Improvement Act of 2009, requiring a short and a long-term rail investment program, a 4-year and a 20-year program, and analysis of those program effects. The hook for the federal requirement is that an FRA-accepted state rail plan is required to access federal funding for rail. Additionally, California has AB 528 state-specific requirements for a state rail plan, which align very nicely with the federal requirements. And that also adds a 10-year intercity rail capital program. So we have a federal 4-year, a state 10-year outlook, and then a 20-year long-term vision required by the feds. and specifically AB 528 calls out requirements for integrating the state passenger rail network, high-speed rail, intercity rail, commuter, and other modes. So when we look at the 2040 vision for passenger rail, what we foresee is that the rail plan investments are going to open the door for travelers to glide past traffic on reliable trains and buses in dedicated lanes, allow passengers to transfer quickly and easily with time transfers between trains and other services, and to plan an entire door-to-door trip, even using different trains and transit agencies using a single ticket. That is our long-term vision for passenger rail in California. Other components of that is that the statewide system is going to tie together urban, suburban, and rural portions of the state. We took a holistic look not only at rail, but also at transit, intercity bus, and the first last mile connections that can provide a real alternative to single occupant vehicle travel on our highways. In order to make that system work well, we had to have integrated services. So we need to make those connections between the modes and between the different rail services as easy to use as possible, as frequent and as convenient for the passengers as possible. Coordinated schedules are a large part of that. So we have laid out at each of the time frames ways to ensure that intercity rail and commuter rail services can provide passengers with, so that you don't end up at a station wanting to make a transfer and the train that you needed to transfer to departed 5 minutes earlier. We want to work with the agencies and lay out a vision for how we can make those schedules work for the passengers. On top of that, we are looking at growing the frequency of service over the horizon of the state rail plan, so that eventually rail becomes an auto-competitive option, a timely option, with connections, the ability to travel anywhere across the state every 30 to 60 minutes, depending on where you are. And there will be services in metropolitan areas that could be far more frequent, as frequent as every 10 or 15 minutes in the Caltrain corridor in Los Angeles area. And an overarching theme for all of the passenger rail vision is a very strong customer focus. We need to make it as easy to use as pulling the car keys out of your pocket, getting in your car and driving. So we need to make sure that we are presenting a vision of a one-stop shop for trip planning information, scheduling, and updated passenger information. And all of these things are described in the rail plan. So to sort of reiterate the rail plan network for passengers, we want to connect California's communities, not just the ones that have rail service today. We want to expand access across the state, either with rail or with a mode that provides a nice link to the rail system. We want to develop emerging regional rail networks so that as high-speed rail is developed, as the intercity JPAs grow and commuter systems grow, we also want to look at other opportunities across the state, such as passenger rail networks in the Monterey Bay Area, Central Coast, Central Valley, finding other ways to get people off of the highway and into another mode that can get them where they need to go in an energy-efficient manner. In terms of efficiency and effectiveness, where I think California has gone to great lengths and far above what other states have done, is we are really looking at how we can intensively utilize the infrastructure that is out there today and continue to grow our infrastructure in a way that matches the service so that we do not overbuild, but we also provide the amount of service that the passengers need. So we want to make sure that we're getting out there and maximizing the use of the passenger rail corridors and the agreements that we have with host railroads, that if we have an agreement to get 20 trains a day and we're only using 15 today, we want to get up to that point. Beyond that, as we need to build more infrastructure and work with those host railroads, we want to do it in a smarter way than has traditionally been done in the past. We want to make sure that we're building the infrastructure that is required to provide the service that is desired. And additionally, higher frequencies are incredibly important in the system. If you build the capacity and put it out there, we should be using it. It drives down the marginal cost of using it, and it also provides freedom for the traveler to have that higher frequency. We're also looking at opportunities to drive down costs and subsidies per passenger. There are a variety of ways to do that. One of those or two of those are what I just mentioned, the higher frequencies, better utilization of infrastructure. But we're also looking at opportunities such as integrated ticketing and schedule coordination so that service providers are sharing passengers, bringing passengers to each other. Also looking at technologies and rail equipment that can basically be operated at a lower cost. When you look globally, we are about 50 or 60 cents per passenger mile. This is a very broad generalization, but we operate trains at about 50 to 60 cents per passenger mile. Many countries in Europe and Japan and Asia are doing it at the 10 to 15 cent per passenger mile range. A lot of that is the legacy of the way we operate passenger rail in America and the equipment, but we think that there are opportunities on the horizon, and we're working with partners at the FRA and manufacturers and operators to see if we can bring California closer to that realm of global best practice in terms of operating costs and subsidies per passenger. And eventually, if we achieve the network goals set out in the 2040 vision, what we can do is grow ridership on the California rail system from today's 110,000 daily trips 11-fold to over 1.3 million daily trips across California. Those trips will also be longer trips, so it will be more than an 11-fold increase in passenger miles traveled on rail, which will help to mitigate roadway congestion by giving people an alternative, reduce emissions, and really offer a convenient, and all this has to be done by offering a convenient option to passengers that can preferably become the choice option, the preferred option in a variety of markets across California. And on the freight side, the investments should also provide alternatives to truck transport of containerized cargo, both in the ports and across the state. On the freight side, we focused on a variety of areas for improvements, looking at trade corridor improvements, working with the SB1 programs and funding opportunities. We've been partnering with short-line railroads, and our stakeholder group has included county economic development authorities and others looking at opportunities to improve short-line access to smaller markets and to help shippers have more opportunities to move their products by rail. We've also been looking at grade crossing improvements to create fluidity in these trade corridors and investments in terminal and yard capacity to make sure that we can get containers off the dock and we can get trains onto the main line as they need to be done. And additionally, looking at, sort of tied in with the short line railroads, is this effort to look at short haul services to make rail more competitive in the shorter distance markets, again, helping to alleviate roadway congestion from trucks. In terms of the investment strategy, the way that the state rail plan looks at this, and this is something I think is fairly revolutionary compared to other state rail plans, rather than looking at one corridor and developing that specific project to its end state, we have taken a look at the entire state. We have done a comprehensive, what we're calling a network integration and strategic service plan with our stakeholders, with our partners, to identify what this system should look like in 2040. Then when we begin to phase out the investments, we started by looking at the first near-term horizon, that 4-year horizon, and looking at planned and programmed committed projects and making sure that those are being fine-tuned and developed in a way that they can be produced and provide benefits in the near term based on those planned and programmed investments. But then when we want to look farther into the future, we've looked at that 2040 vision and the midterm goals, the green dot, the 2027 horizon. All the projects that we're looking at in that 2027 horizon should be projects that are ensuring that we're on our way to the 2040 vision. So we set where we need to be, and we work back from that instead of a sort of scattershot, start from zero and go off in different directions approach. So some of the investment ideas in the 2022 timeframe for the passenger network is, as I mentioned, we're going to be looking at planned and committed projects. Caltrans and its partners will be looking at service implementation planning, so getting our fingers dirty with the service schedules and the operators and figuring out ways that we can actually start to provide this better service and start to link the services that are out there in a way that is better for the passengers, schedule improvements, minor time-saving improvements. We're also going to begin working on integrated ticketing investments. We've already started working with partners in funding projects to look at global best practices for integrated ticketing, fare and revenue distribution, and starting to think about what role the state will play in those investments in the future. In the midterm, the plan looks at those projects that can be reasonably expected to be funded, and SB1 has been a tremendous burden, and that's tremendous advantage, and part of the reason why it's been 6 or 7 months since we came to you last with the draft rail plan is because we have enjoyed the opportunity over that time to get back into the rail plan and think about the effects that SB1 is going to have and the impact it's going to have in enabling us to do this work and making sure that those projects that we're looking at in the 2027 timeframe are funded. And now we have a great opportunity to actually realistically expect the funding for those projects. So that's been incredibly helpful. We want to look at full utilization of those existing capacities on the host railroads. We expect high-speed rail valley-to-valley completion by the midterm of the rail plan. We expect great connectivity improvements working with our partners on the existing services and the services that come into being by 2027, that they will be tied to each other. And we hope that the investments and research that we're doing in integrated ticketing now can be fully developed and deployed by the 2027 timeframe. And then for the long-term vision by 2040, we are looking at high-speed rail phase 1 and other expansion efforts being online, and other investments to support service goals so that we can provide this 30 to 60-minute service across the state in a coordinated fashion. On the freight rail side, in the 2022 short-term plan, we are looking at investments to alleviate existing rail bottlenecks. A lot of that also ties in grade crossing improvements and elimination to get back to the fluidity and safety benefits of a sort of a sealed corridor freight, and looking at established funding sources and working with our partners on the freight railroad side. In the midterm, we're looking at expanding freight capacity, especially in trade corridors, and investing in shared rail corridors, so that where the state is putting money into passenger investments, we're making those investments in a way that also benefits the host railroad. We're trying to become much more of a partner with the host railroads, and I think that the funding that we have now in front of us gives us a real opportunity to actually come to the table as an equal partner and present them with something that can actually make them consider our proposals in a serious way. And so by 2027, we hope that we'll be having a lot of shared investments with the host railroads for freight and passenger. And then in the long-term vision, we want to look at the full realization of trade corridor improvements, getting goods out of the ports in a safe and quick manner, and again, continued shared corridor expansion with those host railroads. So where we are now, as was mentioned, the plan was released last Wednesday, October 11th. We have a 60-day public comment period. The staff is currently heading out across the state to solicit public comments at events in 6 or 7 locations. We'll be having an online webinar on December 6th, and we're meeting with our stakeholders as we go. And we will be back at CTC to hear your comments and, of course, questions today as well. And I hope that timing works out very well with the 60-day public comment period. I believe it does. After the comment period is closed, the staff will be working on a revision of the draft through, we say, winter 2017. I would say perhaps that's winter 2018, sort of December to February. And then at the point that we wrap up the draft, it then goes to agency for approval. The FRA then accepts the document or refuses it, but it's basically ensuring that we follow the guidelines, and that will enable us to go out and seek federal funding, and then it goes to the legislature. So that is the status of the State Rail Plan, and I welcome any questions.
Questions?
Yeah, could you
Huh?
roll back about 4 slides, please, to your investment? Go forward one more. Okay. Much of what are the game changers in terms of improving air quality and improving trade corridors in your plan don't happen until the 2040 time period. Am I reading that correct? So the full realization of the trade corridor improvements, which are really going to take traffic off of roads and put it on rail, don't happen until 2040?
No, I think, well, if you go back to the time horizons idea, that we're looking at the long-term vision and building back from it, I think we're starting to make a down payment. We're starting to partner on freight investments going forward, knowing what we're trying to get to in 2040. The host railroads are incredibly active in getting goods out of the Port of Los Angeles and Long Beach, and working with Alameda County and getting goods out of the Port of Oakland. And they have a lot of private capital that they are eager to get into play quickly. And we're also pursuing infra grants and Tiger grants with the host freight railroads. And so a lot of those projects, I'm sorry if I gave the indication that those were going to come on later. The capital funding from the private side is there. They're interested. They're also very interested in what the state can offer to make a partnership. And I think that with the state working with the freight railroads, we can start to get to work on those trade corridor
So
improvements.
how will this document bring everybody together and reduce this notion where everyone in the community has a veto because I don't want another train going past in my area? So how are we going to use this document to realize the vision we all have, but not have it be 25 years from now, but have it actually be in the next 10 to 13 years where we really want change to occur?
On the freight railroad side, I think what's embedded in this document is an improved relationship with the host railroads, with BNSF and the Union Pacific. And
I understand that. So now how are you going to get the person who's passionate about preventing another railroad to come past her house or blow a horn past her house who's got everybody up in arms and that's preventing additional freight to get on the railroad? How do we move everybody together to get communities to move together to understand that this is an important part of our whole larger vision of cleaning up the air and reducing traffic?
Great point. I think a lot
I don't know
of,
if this report does it.
yeah, I think a lot of the ability to act in that area is going to come from the host railroads. We can support their efforts. They have an outstanding
So the host
safety-
railroad's going to be the person who pulls all these people together?
Well, if they're the ones that they're the ones that can provide the safety information, that can put their record out there, and the state can help to say, these are the ways that we are going to invest in.
No, who's going to be the passionate champion who's going to bring all the parties together to really who's going to dedicate their life to this for the next 10 to 15 years to get this done?
I will do my part.
If it doesn't, this is going to be a really nice report, and it's not going to change the behavior that we need to have change. This is really critical, and the host railroads, maybe they are happy, but I don't see some person who's going to make it their life's work to break down the barriers that we always have great ideas, but then the barriers
Yes,
come up,
Mike.
and we just can't make it work.
Paul, can you use your mic?
Huh?
Use your mic,
Oh, I'm
please,
sorry.
for the audience.
For the webcast.
For the web-
Okay.
Yeah, don't worry, we could hear you.
Loud and clear.
Well, let me offer up some comment. Look, you've articulated some of the challenges we have very well. It's going to be incumbent upon all of us to be able to overcome that. I think this plan sets a vision as to where we want to go, but individual projects are always going to have headwind. We've got to use that vision to be able to get the individual projects and step our way into accomplishing what we want to accomplish. But we all have to overcome the headwind and the challenges that you've articulated.
I would my comment on your draft is this is great, but unless you say this is the person or agency that's going to be the champion, that's going to hit the headwinds, and this is how we're going to strategically do that, my fear is that it's pretty safe. It's not a game changer that we need it to be. Go.
Commissioner Dunn.
Thank you.
Thank you for your report. I was fascinated the last time that the state rail plan came before the commission, before this was put in print, is that we had the privilege of hearing Hyperloop One do a presentation, and I asked at that time, are we going to make sure that innovative technologies and other private sector solutions to government niches that are not being filled might be included in here? I noticed, and I haven't read it cover to cover, but like on page 49, there's about 4 paragraphs dedicated to private sector involvement. I always am amazed because we're in such an age of disruption and change. And when you have Airbnbs, ride sharing, drones, already well into implementation of niches that needed to get filled, and government is always catching up to them, right? And now we're finding government's deciding to regulate a private sector solution that hadn't been filled. I would encourage more discussion on that in this report, and I would ask our staff to consider that. When you already have tests going on of Abu Dhabi to Dubai, 12 minutes at, I don't know, it's like 1,800 kilometers per second or something. I mean, it's faster than even a Boeing jet, and it's already being tested that we have some teams, Hyperloop One with Richard Branson now involved, 200 employees in LA alone, a UCI center, a Florida center. I would be thinking about that, even if it's just, we don't know where this is going to go, but we want you to know we're aware of it at the state level and keeping an eye on it. Does that make sense?
Certainly.
Because a state that's 267 years old, and you still can't get from one end of the state to the other on rail. You have to take a bus. This is like not what I would say gives me confidence that by 2040 anything is going to change again, because we're just not, and California is it's our whole governor's point is we're the the bastion of innovation. I mean, on top of air quality challenges, but the innovation aspect of it. I would just be highlighting far more what we could do as a state connected with the private sector, between not only just forward thinking, but investment. Does that make sense?
It does. And we've been working very closely with, we've been giving many presentations to partners in the Bay Area,
Sure.
Groups that have members that are from these disruptor companies. We've been
Yes.
talking with city staff who've been dealing with Uber and these dockless bike share companies and the issues of how they incorporate these things as they pop up, from one week to the next. And we do believe that there is a great deal of opportunity there, especially when you look at first and last mile solutions. We need to be considering the entire palette, TNCs, bike share, whatever else is out there. And on the other end of the spectrum, in terms of speed and distance, looking at Hyperloop and opportunities like that.
Yeah.
I think that one thing that the rail plan does incredibly well is that, and that rail does incredibly well, is it provides capacity and congestion relief, especially in regional areas, that is tried and true, that is 200-year-old technology, which sounds antiquated, but the rest of the world is finding ways to continually improve it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a focus of the rail plan, while we are also integrating with high-speed rail for the spine to provide fast service north to south, we also have focused heavily on how to move people around the metropolitan regions. And some of the solutions, such as Hyperloop, is not 1,800 kilometers per second, is not going to help getting you from Roseville to Sacramento. You'll overshoot. But the idea that we can do something with this tried and true technology that can move people efficiently in a way that cleans the air and reliably, we're really starting to focus on not just the cross-state movement, but also getting across the state, getting around your community, and tying those two systems together. But at the same time, keeping an eye on the technological improvements that come along and figuring out how they would help promote the vision, how they would support the vision. So if a Hyperloop technology is something that is becoming more promising for a long distance trip across the state, we can continue to work that into the framework and the vision. The technology is actually fairly neutral in here in terms of propulsion and vehicles and things like that. It's the idea of moving the people from where they want to go to where they need to go, and connecting the modes they're going to have to use to get there along the way is a big part
But
of
a
it.
plan is a plan, right? Just as Commissioner Paul has said, it sits on a shelf. And I get really excited if I saw a line in here that said, and we commit to you, State of California, that you won't have to get on a bus in this year. In 2027, you will never have to be on a bus again, and that shows that's a game-changing statement. Do you see what I'm saying?
I do.
That kind of thing. And it doesn't have to be specifically Hyperloop, but I would have a page identifying what technologies are out there. You do reference high-speed to Las Vegas and the high desert corridor, and that's private sector, I get all that. But something that says that we're aware that there are disruptive technologies that could impact a 2040 plan. So we're dealing with what we have to deal with today, but we're aware. And then to my colleagues' comments, it would, and maybe it's here, the state, I could be wrong on this, but I perceive we tend to do these plans in silos. It would be very nice to have the state rail plan connect with an AQMD plan, an ARB plan on clean air, connect with an energy plan on electrifying systems, so that we have the full picture. And even if it's just a page in references, by the way, this connects to this and this connects to this, because the world is bigger than a nice 24 plan. I know that's my big, hairy, audacious dream, but it sort of helps answer the questions of the other improvements that come with the reason why we're doing this. If that makes sense.
Yes, we will include more detail on burgeoning technologies. And I think that the other thing about what I find fascinating about the railroad system is it is very much a system, and we have to think about the technologies and how they interact with each other, but also how they interact with other potential technologies. And so the idea of reaching out to ARB and talking about where the rail industry is going with technology that can improve the air, we need to be having that conversation with ARB about how we can make sure that we're setting up the state to adapt these technologies and bring them into play.
And I challenge you to an asterisk in here somewhere that says, in this year, you will no longer be on a bus.
And chapter 4 2024, I believe.
It'll be there? Okay, good.
There are statements such as that. By
Great.
this time frame. And that's the way we laid it out, that we really tied it to service goals. The idea that by 2022, in this region or in this corridor, there will be 30-minute service. We haven't said it will be a high-speed rail train, it will be a commuter train, it could be a Hyperloop, but the
Correct.
idea is that the system and the connections will be made and that the service will be there for the residents. And hopefully having that framework without the specific details of technology allows the technologies to be chosen wisely and to be new technologies to be brought in. And it also allows the communities to say, here's what the state plans for service. What can we do on the housing side, on the sustainability and climate change resilience side to make sure that we're ready and can take advantage of 30 or 60-minute service coming through our community at this point in time, 2022, 2027, and then 2040.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kehoe?
You might, and maybe you already have, taken a look at the state's zero emission vehicles action plan. And there is an agency, not agency, government-wide task force that looks at how each department can connect with zero emission vehicles. And trains aren't quite zero emissions, but as far as Lucy's point, you'll see how there's staff in virtually all the state agencies that are looking at how to coordinate these discussions on air quality, moving toward electrification, reducing pollution, et cetera, and deployment of electric and other hydrogen vehicles, et cetera. I think it might be helpful. And then just quickly, to Paul's comments, downtown San Diego has a very busy rail line that goes goes up the coast, and the San Diego Airport is on one side of that rail line, and pretty much the rest of the city is on the other side of that rail line. So how neighbors respond to a busy railroad right-of-way is, something I'm very familiar with, and it's, as you are pointing out, not easy to deal with. But I think it's essential to have local government communication. I won't even go so far as to say buy-in early on, but hopefully it results in buy-in. And that means information to city and county elected officials and administration people, and also at the neighborhood level, because you just have to, whether you can bring them into the discussion in a positive way eventually or not, you've got to be there and listen. Otherwise, you do have those people that don't want to hear any horns overnight. We dealt with that one. Stop traffic, et cetera, everything that goes along with that. And it does slow things down a lot, but it's going to happen. So we need to get out in front of it and start building coalitions that are able to really dive in and spend a lot of time on that.
And one of the things we'd like to do at the Division of Rail and Mass Transportation is to begin to develop and share our expertise and knowledge about things like vehicle technology that may be able to make it a more pleasant living environment around the San Diego Depot, because we know about technologies that are coming, hydrogen or battery power, things that may make the trains quieter. We can be more proactive in sharing with the communities about quiet zone rules and opportunities there to prevent that freight horn in the middle of the night.
Also, just quickly, and you're probably already aware of this, intense high-density development along the railroad right-of-ways in the urban corridors. That's another special challenge.
Absolutely. And just to your point about emissions, one of the models that we looked very closely to, several global models, but the Swiss model is one we've learned a lot from. But on the technology side, I think it shows that rail can continue to be an absolute leader in clean air technology. 21% of all the passenger miles traveled in Switzerland are by rail or transit, and there are zero greenhouse gas emissions from rail. It is all hydropowered. The entire system is electrified, and it just shows the potential that you can move 21% of the trips and the miles traveled in your country and do it without emissions. And so I think there's a lot that we don't have to reinvent things to make great improvements in rail, but we can continue to push the envelope in terms of technology and emissions, and we're going to try to support that here in California.
Well, considering we haven't read it, we'll get back to you. But Brian Annis?
Even more to say.
I appreciate that we have been able to start the discussion now and then come back in December, as you mentioned. Did want to react to a couple of the comments. I was around, I think the last rail plan was 2012, if I'm right. So that was kind of at the beginning of this administration. And one of the criticisms of that plan and even from our commuter rail partners, that it was not an integrated plan, that really the map you saw in the PowerPoint that showed the state of California with the different speeds of services, that map didn't exist in the last rail plan. Instead, it was 12 or 13 different colors representing all these separate operators. So I think that the vision here has been great to show a system of rail that's interconnected, and the work of putting this together with the partners, I think, has brought in many ways the partners together, commuter and intercity rail, much more integrated in discussion. As far as the difficulty of really any kind of transportation expansion in capacity, whether it's highways or rail, we do have these challenges. One observation I can note, though, is back in that 2012 era, we had, of our 3 intercity rail lines, only one was managed by a joint powers authority. That was the Capital Corridor line. Back at that time, we had some elected officials in the Sacramento region come in and meet with the agency and say, any passenger rail on this Sacramento subdivision that comes up through 19th Street in Sacramento is dead on arrival. Don't even think about it. Neighborhoods will oppose it. There's no way. Just don't even talk about it. And the reason that should be considered is that there's a lot of capacity on that line. The alternative is the Fresno subdivision that goes up through Sacramento State. But we only have 2 Amtrak round trips a day that can use that line. So we established, I think it was 2014, joint powers authorities for the other 2 intercity rail lines, the San Joaquin and the Lausanne down south. I think with that, the elected officials, local elected officials you referred to, they were empowered to think through these problems, to directly be in discussions with the freight railroads. So a couple of these same elected officials in 2012 said, don't even think about this Sacramento subdivision to increase service between Sacramento and Stockton. They're now prime supporters of using that alignment to bring commuter trains at the right time of day, linking Sacramento and Stockton. So I think there are tools that are being developed, and relationships, and the success isn't on hold until 2040. I think there's many short-term improvements that are being made. And again, from my observation of 2012 until now, I think a lot has been done, and we're seeing some of those improvements taking place now.
And I think part of the reason why it's taken us a little bit longer to get this out is because we've had partners like the Sacramento example, and we've been convening a working group with Bay Area rail agencies. We've been incubating the ideas here for many years, and now people just want to get to work on it. So we've had the JPA in the Sacramento area take the principles here and start to work on solving the local political problems. We've had the Bay Area rail agencies getting together and saying, let's just start working on this. And so that's part of why it's taken an extra month or 2 to get this out, because we are getting support from the agencies, and those agencies are going out and doing a great job working on the local political issues and creating a tremendous support for some of the things that are coming out in the rail plan, and to the point where some of the TIRCP applications, which will be coming in just a few months, will be acting on the principles in this plan and really putting investment in quickly, at least as far as I know on the passenger side, as soon as next April, to really get the ball rolling on projects that are very different than what we were talking about in 2012 and much more transformative.
Well, we will all pledge to do our homework, but we do have one public comment. So Ron DeCarli from San Luis Obispo Council of Governments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Really appreciate the opportunity to take a look at this plan in detail. Going through and trying to expand rail transit and looking at transit service in the last 25 years has been challenging, to say the least. We're really pleased to see this plan come forward. We think it's very comprehensive. We think it will be transformative. Relative to the comments that was made, who's going to be the champions here? Well, frankly, it really has to be all of us. But it really needs to come down to the locals, and it needs to be us. It needs to be the MPOs working with the local jurisdictions. With Proposition 116 that was passed, that provided the really first renaissance of rail in California. In our small little county, we got 3 train stations. We got expansions of rail. We had a lot of opposition, and we worked with the communities. We worked directly with the locals, and we worked with the state. And we got 3 stations in, and we've been pushing for more services ever since. I really like the goal of trying to come up with something much more specific, transformative. I'd appreciate seeing that. I think that's where we need to go in the state of California. I don't think it's necessary this becomes a standalone document. Again, the MPOs, it's incumbent upon us to integrate all modes of transportation. From our standpoint, we've long been looking at expansions of 101. How do we deal with our corridor? Like Santa Barbara County has been looking at a train in a lane. We've been looking at exactly the same kind of things of trying to enhance intercity rail services to get people off of Highway 101 in our county, for instance. So we think this plan, it has a really lot of potential. We think it's transformative. We think it will be enhancing effectiveness and increasing ridership. I appreciate the short, mid, and long term, with a longer term vision of 2040, preferably trying to move that up a little bit more. But I think I'm really excited about this because of SB1 and because of the extension of cap and trade. We now have money, you now have money to start implementing some of this stuff, and that makes a significant difference. In our region, we've long been pushing for services enhancement, San Luis Obispo, south to Los Angeles, down to San Diego, the Surfliner. Looking to increase services, increasing reliability, increasing speeds, and I think now with SB1, cap and trade will have those funding. We've long sought for a Los Angeles, San Luis Obispo, San Francisco train, a connection along the Central Coast. And that's been a very difficult goal to achieve. And I think your staff has finally came to the point that says, no, they didn't necessarily agree that we need this. They basically said, maybe you really need to start from San Luis Obispo and head north and start San Luis Obispo and head south. And in the ITIP that you're going to be considering soon is a rail layover facility that the State Division of Rail is proposing that starts at Vision. So we're excited, changing our regional transportation plan to start reflecting that and to try and move forward. We're excited. We'll be looking forward to submitting more specific comments, and we're very supportive. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. So our partners at Caltrans, thank you for all the work on this, and we all have it on all of our collective shoulders to make sure that we end up with the very best plan, so thank you very much. Item number 70, this would be Stephen.
Yes, Commissioners, good morning. Item number 70 is the Caltrans fourth quarter project delivery report. And I want to note for you that on page 2 of the report, they do have a 5-year trend analysis of performance measures and goals, and it looks very good. They do have very aggressive goals set for themselves, and they've been performing pretty well against the goals. Also, the next part of the report is the watch list, and the watch list has grown now to about 4 pages, but we have to note that the game has changed since July. We are now also tracking not only the capital side, which we've always done for years, but now we're also tracking the capital outlay support side, project by project. And that's why the list has grown a little bit, because we are now tracking other things that we did not track before. And having said that, Jim Davis from the department is ready to present the fourth quarter report to you.
Good morning, Commissioners, Madam Vice Chair. My name is Jim Davis, and I'm the Capital Outlay Support Program Manager, and I'll be talking about the fourth quarter project delivery report. We have some early SB1 successes. With your action later in this meeting, the Commission will have amended $4.2 billion between August and October of 2018 SHOP candidates into the 2016 SHOP for early start. If you add June, that number increases to $4.7 billion. That means we get to start on $4.7 billion earlier than we would have without SB1. In addition, the department has accelerated 20 program projects to the fiscal year 17-18, or this year, for $668 million because of SB1. And next year, we will have accelerated 28 program projects for a total of $406 million. So real success story due to SB1. This is a slide that I've showed on the stages of project delivery a number of times to you, but I've added an arrow, and I've added this white arrow called programming. And historically, this phase of the stage of project delivery was for programming, or basically the end of PID till when we can actually start working on projects in the COS program. And that's historically been about a year. Because of SB1 and this new money, we are able to start projects 8 to 12 months early. If you factor in what the cost of money is, or escalation, which you've adopted in the fund estimate of 4.2%, that's huge efficiency by being able to start projects earlier and getting projects on the street earlier. Our performance. Our annual commitment goals are aggressive, as Mr. Mahler talked about. While we did not meet all the goals, the performance is still very high. I'd like to highlight the first pink item there, the projects designed and ready for construction. We delivered 220 or 200 out of the 227 commitments we had in our contract for delivery, which is 97%. Within a month after the June 30th cutoff, we delivered 5 more of those, or basically 99%. There's still 2 outstanding projects that are challenged, working with the railroad and utility companies, and those are some of the normal risks that we do have to deal with in project delivery. On the budget side of things, we delivered 20 STIP projects that were completed $97 million under budget, and 302 SHOP projects that were completed $135 million under budget. Graphically portraying the SHOP of those 302 projects, you can see that we saved $135 million, or basically 8% on the programmed amount. The last slide I have here is our watch list, or this is our no surprises list. We have 3 projects, or 1% of the 329 projects in design phase, currently have high construction estimates and may require greater than 120% allocation. We do have one project here shortly that will fall under that category. I do need to put this in perspective. We're talking about $12 million of risk on a $2.4 billion program. Advertising, we have 2 projects that are coming forward that may have risk for supplemental. And finally, under construction, on a program that has 931 projects and is currently worth $9.2 billion. So that's $9.2 billion under construction right now. We have a risk on 18 projects for a total of about $179 million, or a little bit under 2% of the program. So that means 98% of the program is functioning at a very, very high level under budget. And that concludes my remarks. I'm open for questions.
Thank you. Do we have questions? Commissioner Dunn?
I love this stuff. Thank you very much, Jim. This is really great news, and we've got to figure out a way to tell the story to continue to buttress that, you know, in the context of things, you know, Caltrans is doing a pretty good job on this stuff. How is PID development coming up? I mean, we really don't have a shelf of projects ready, do we? So can you talk a little bit about?
Well, one of the things that the department in our on our revised budget with SB1, the department did get an increase of PID resources to start the PIDs, and so we are working very diligently on implementing some new processes actually to help us to deliver. I like to say, optimize the dollars to maximize the benefits, recognizing that there's risk early on in a project, so we need to do enough work to get into the capital outlay support phase, recognize the risks associated with this and quantify those risks and make sure that we have the right contingencies that come into my program. So we're working very closely with the PID program on that. So they have a challenge to deliver a lot more PIDs to us so that we can deliver projects out to the customers.
Hard for me to measure what you just said. I get process. It's great, have to do it. So when do you think we'll get a little bit more in the pipeline on that? Do you have any, are there objectives or goals, or, you know, start adding some more shelf stuff?
Yeah, one of the things that, with the commission action to start amending projects earlier, we
Yeah.
are now looking at, once we get a PID done,
Yeah.
we're coming to the commission and we'll amend it in.
Right away.
So as
Okay.
fast as we can get them done, we bring them to the commission to
Okay.
amend in to use the available money.
Okay.
And part of that acceleration is be able to, that we're using in those years that I talked about, those 20 and 28 projects, is to make use of that early money that comes with SB1 this year and in next year to buy us time to get those PIDs ready for the money that is coming.
And is this a time to be thinking about, is this the right process as opposed to just doing the things the same way all the time? I mean, is there something we can do differently that, working with local partners, et cetera, to get things moving faster?
Absolutely, and one of the things that we're doing is re-engineering that process, the PID process,
Yeah.
and look forward to having some discussions with Chris Schmidt, my counterpart, to talk to you about that, because we've been working very closely together to figure out how to reduce the time and money it takes to produce a PID, but also managing risk.
Got it.
Exactly.
So Commissioner, if I can add, I mean, we've scrambled to try to get all the PIDs done to feed the amendments that you're seeing now to add that $5 billion worth of workload to our portfolio. We also have that same PID plan, what we need to have in hand for the 2018 shop, so that we have all the projects ready to stand up and start the capital support process to have them all there. It's going to be a combination of additional resources and streamlining, because it's a lot of additional work, but we've got a PID plan laid out as to what we have to have written by when to be able to feed the available dollars that we're going to have for the shop.
I would be interested, maybe offline, in how are you changing that process to streamline it? I mean, I just
Sure.
sort of want that stuff in my head.
Sure.
We're not doing business the same way, and we have new tax dollars, and we have to be responsive, obviously, to the taxpayers, and to show that we are doing things differently.
I think that's fair. Also, we're also tracking the cost of PIDs and how
Right.
that has changed over time.
Exactly. Thanks.
Commissioner Gomez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jim, I don't want to take commission time, but I'm very concerned about some of the very high items that are on the watch list. So maybe if we could have a conference call, or I'll come up to Sacramento and meet with you and our staff and go over some of these things. I'd like a better understanding of where we're at on some of them.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I have one suggestion for all of us, too. As we're rolling on SB1, I would suggest that we do an outreach to our utility partners, because at the end of the day, if we're held up because of one of our partners, we still collectively own it. The public thinks we didn't get a transportation project done. So to the extent that we're able to put our arms around some of the volumes that are going to be coming towards Southern California Edison, PG&E, let's try to sit with the appropriate people and see what we can do to make sure they understand our steadfast commitment to serve the people and get these projects completed. So happy to help. I'll volunteer my fellow commissioners to join any of those if we can help. But I think communication will be the key, and the sooner we can talk to our partners and let them know, probably the more cooperation we'll be able to ascertain. So thank you.
Madam Vice Chair, that's a great point. In fact, we've had 2 outreaches with our industry, including the utility companies. In fact, Commissioner Kehoe joined us down in San Diego for our SB1 outreach with all the transportation stakeholders, and recognizing it's not just the work with the state, but it's also the work with the cities and counties that we have to look at the whole transportation industry and grow the whole entire transportation industry.
Well, I have commissioners that hail from a whole bunch of different geographic areas, so I'd take advantage of that, and I'll volunteer all of us. I think we'd be happy to participate. So thank you very, very much. All right, moving along, item 71, Toll Bridge Seismic Retrofit Program. Stephen.
Yes, Commissioners, this is a quarterly report on the Toll Bridge Seismic Retrofit Program. I'm happy to report to you that we have finished the regrouting of the anchor tower bolts. So now we are completely finished with all work on the new East Bay Bridge itself. It is totally and completely done. Only outstanding issue with there is still some claims filed by the contractor, APF, and those are being resolved by the department. We are in the mode of still imploding the foundations from the Old Bay Bridge, and those foundations are moving smoothly. We only have 2 more weekends of implosions left. There's going to be a triple implosion coming up on the 28th. Any and all of you who want to come and visit and see that, we're happy to invite you and have you there. I believe Commissioner Paul is going to be there on Saturday. It's going to be at 8 a.m. in the morning when the actual implosion is going to happen. Once we are done with the implosions, and can you show it's a beautiful bridge, as you can see. I was going to have a video showing some of the implosions that we had, but due to technical difficulties here, I can't show you the video. But you are more than welcome to come and see it in person. That next slide, I have some, I just have some stills of an implosion. Here you can see the bubble curtain blowing bubbles around the foundation. And the next slide. And here's preparation to the implosion itself. But I don't think, and do we have one more, or is it? And here's the actual implosion that you can see the water shooting up. Now, after we're done with the implosion, the only thing left for the Tollbridge Program Oversight Committee to do is to determine what to do with 5 piers that we want to leave in place as view shed, access to the water, and those type of activities. Some of it will save us some money if we don't have to demolish those, and that'd be great historical monuments. BADA MTC is stepping up to cover operating costs and maintenance costs for keeping those in place. East Bay Regional Parks is stepping up to say that they will operate on the Oakland side, and TIDA in San Francisco is stepping up to say that they will operate the pier that's on the Yerba Buena Island side. We are still trying to resolve the issues of who will actually own those piers after we're said and done. But after all of these are resolved, pretty much the Tollbridge Program Oversight Committee can be shut down. I am looking forward to that. And any questions?
Any questions? Thank you, Stephen. Item 72, template for supplemental funds allocation request.
Good morning, Commissioners. Item 72 is an action item requesting approval of templates to guide the development of supplemental allocation funds requests. A template will enhance the relevance, uniformity, and transparency of the information contained in the requests that come before you. Commission staff recommends that the Commission approve these supplemental funds allocation requests.
We have a motion by Commissioner Dunn, second by Paul, I believe. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 73.
Yes, Commissioners. Item 73 is a allocation for a project that's seeking an allocation of greater than 20% of its original programming amount. The project is a seismic retrofit project on the Schofield Bridge next to the Richmond Center FL Bridge. The original scope of the project was a simple seismic retrofit where they were just going to beef up the columns, but once they got into the design, they realized that this isn't going to be a simple retrofit. They needed to go in and do isolation bearings. By that, they would have to jack up the superstructure, demolish 2 to 3 feet of columns, install the isolation bearings, and then lower the superstructure back down. So the cost pretty much is doubling on the project. I believe that this still is a good investment. You really can't change the process by which this was being done. It needs to be retrofitted the way they are now designing it, and staff would be recommending that you approve this allocation.
We have a motion by Commissioner Gometti, a second by Commissioner Dunn. Any discussion? Call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. Item 74.
Yes, Commissioners. Item 74 is a supplemental allocation to award a project. This project was designed, put out to bid. There were many bidders. The low bidder was about 7% over the engineer's estimate, but he was disqualified for cause. The next low bidder is about 21% over the engineer's estimate. We do not believe that rebidding this project is going to bring the bids down any lower, because there's a lot of work being done by contractors on the Oroville Dam, so they're pretty busy. If you're going to be doing a project in that area, you're going to be paying top dollar for the contractors to be interested. So staff recommends that you approve this supplemental allocation.
Oh, okay, the motion was by Gilmetti, second Tavaloni. Did I hear that correctly? Any discussion? All in favor? Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? For the record, motion carries. Item 75, Stephen.
Yes, Commissioners. Item 75 is a update on the resolution of necessity that you adopted at the last commission meeting for the State Route 58 Kramer Junction. At that time, the commissioners wanted the department, Southern California Edison, and the property owners to get together and see if Southern California Edison's towers could be relocated or moved into different locations. That meeting has happened. It was determined that Southern California Edison cannot relocate its transmission towers. They have to stay in place. The property owners have acquiesced and said, fine, they understand. So the issue basically is now resolved.
Thank you for that information update. We appreciate it. Item 76.
Yes, Commissioners. Item
Okay.
7.
I'm sorry.
The RON, we approved the RON already.
The RON was approved, but you just put a condition that they meet. Item 76 is the conveyance, basically director's deeds conveyance of excess state-owned property on from the Hayward bypass. These are the last conveyances from the department to the city of Hayward. It's about $55 million. Staff recommends that you approve these conveyances.
Move approval. Thank God.
Yes. We are, Commissioner, we are done.
A motion has been made by Commissioner Gilmetti with salutations, I think, celebration, seconded by Commissioner Kehoe. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please vote.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. We skip now to item number 80.
Good morning, Commissioners. Item 80 is an action item requesting approval of standard reporting formats to be used by Caltrans for the quarterly progress reports required by the interim shop guidelines. Commission staff developed these standard reporting formats based on the guidelines to facilitate the transmission of the quarterly information to the Commission. Please note, since this is the first time as we start to do this reporting and implementing the guidelines, that I do expect that there will be some minor changes, updates to the formats to improve readability and transparency. With that, Commission staff recommends the Commission approve the quarterly report formats.
We have a motion by Commissioner Dunn, the second. Do we have a second? I'm sorry, Commissioner Kehoe, I didn't hear you. Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. Item 81.
Commissioners, item 81 is an information item for the fiscal year 16-17 major damage restoration closeout report. This report, required by Commission Resolution G11, that's the emergency project resolution, summarizes the allocations and activities performed by Caltrans last year. Please note that this has a yellow replacement book item. Mr. Tony Tavares, Division Chief of Maintenance, will present a brief summary of the report.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. I'm Tony Tavares, Chief of the Division of Maintenance with Caltrans. It's an honor to be here this morning to give you an update and a report on the 2016-17 reservation amount that was used for director's orders and emergency contracts. As you may recall, California experienced one of the wettest winters we had in historical history here in California last winter, primarily during the months of January through March 2017. Our initial reservation amount at the beginning of the fiscal year 16-17 was $155 million. Caltrans returned to the Commission 3 separate times during fiscal year 16-17 to request an increase in the reservation amount. In June 2017, the final increase approved by the commission brought the total reservation amount to $975 million. At the close of fiscal year 16-17, Caltrans approved construction contracts in the amount of approximately $924 million for over 400 damaged sites. As of the end of September 2017, all the damage assessment forms, which are considered the DAFs, have been submitted to the Federal Highway Administration for approval. Those 414 DAFs have been submitted, and thus far, the Federal Highway Administration has approved 131 of those 414 DAFs in the amount of $384 million. After the Federal Highway Administration approves the DAFs, Caltrans can begin receiving reimbursements for our expenditures to the extent that federal reimbursement funding is available. Also, as a note, for fiscal year 16-17, Caltrans has received $1.2 million in federal emergency relief reimbursement from the Federal Highway Administration. Commissioners, this concludes my report. I'm happy and welcome any questions that you may have.
Commissioner Gometti.
It's a little off your report, but I was curious about the fires, and were there any damages to the roads up there? These were all storm-related, I'm assuming?
These were all storm-related, correct.
Is there any update on, do we have roads damaged through the fires?
We do. We've had quite a bit of damage to guardrails, signs, some pavement damage as well. We have crews that have been working to make those repairs on Highway 12, 29, 121, and 128 in the Napa and Sonoma County areas. We've also received 3 director's orders totaling $13.6 million thus far. We anticipate one additional director's order coming in the next few days also. So our crews are working 12-hour shifts right now. We have hundreds of resources in the area to get those roadways open. We're also working alongside contractors that are in the area as well to help us restore the area and get traffic flowing.
That number is going to go up a little bit?
We anticipate it to go up slightly.
Yeah, the emergency contracts, as Tony pointed out, was $13.6 million, and then probably one other emergency contract. So it's not a significant amount of cost. We're also tracking, a lot of work is being done by our crews, where we're bringing them in from around the state, and we're also tracking their costs with a special designation, and we expect that most of those costs, either the emergency contracts or the above and beyond costs of our employees or resources, will also be federally reimbursable. So we're tracking it all. It's not a dramatic cost considering the scale of the event and other impacts.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Well, in round numbers, it's like $1 billion, and I realize that it's kind of an elongated repayment. So is there anything we all can collectively do to kind of lean in? Because I can't imagine all the other states in the U.S. that have suffered damage after damage from a storm, that this slow pay that comes out of the feds is something everybody can live with. So I think we'd be interested to know, is there a collective effort we can do to get our reimbursements in the door a little faster?
We're actively working on that front to try to get a special allocation through an appropriation to catch up on all the emergencies. There's a lot of other emergencies going on throughout the country. We have our storms from last winter. We were actually still in the hole a certain amount of reimbursement before last winter. There's continual conversations with our congressional delegation in Washington, D.C. to try to figure out how to get that special appropriation in there to get that sooner rather than later.
Well, why don't we expand the chorus that's asking? And many of us sit on a number of different business associations, and I think if you succinctly took this to our business partners, maybe we could have some other folks joining the chorus so it's not just our transportation people, because I think all of our business partners and our community partners would understand that we've advanced in round numbers $1 billion this year, and something else isn't happening.
We've communicated both in meetings, verbally and in writing, to our U.S. senators, as well as leadership on different transportation committees and appropriation committees. We can share with your staff those correspondence to see whether or not there's any appropriate way to chime in. But we're active in those conversations, and we'll catch up with your executive director on where we are in those conversations to see what assistance we could get.
Well, we kind of know the head of the Orange County Business Council, so there's the first one to start with. So anyway, no, I just think whatever we can do, and I think if we broaden the chorus, that maybe we can get folks to pay a little more of attention, and we'd happy to do that. So thank you very much, John.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, on that, I'm going to step out and get on my daily call with the fire, so I'll be back shortly.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have item number 82 was withdrawn, so we will move now to item number 83. Rick.
Commissioners, item 83 is an action item requesting approval for amending a total of 141 projects into the shop. The item of note here are the 90 new projects being advanced for programming that are targeting the 4 asset classes highlighted in Senate Bill 1. These 90 projects in 4 asset classes consist of 25 bridge jobs, 29 pavement jobs, 14 culvert projects, and 22 transportation management system projects. All the other programming actions are either projects proposed for programming against existing 2016 shop reservations or revisions to currently programmed 2016 shop projects. Commission staff has reviewed all the proposed new projects and recommends commission approval. Mr. Bruce DeTerra, Division of Transportation Programming, is here to present a brief overview of the proposed new projects.
Thank you, Rick. Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm used to calling you Susan, so see you in the hallway, Madam Director. So before I begin, I wanted to point out that it's not just acceleration of projects, it's acceleration of the Fix-It First projects we're going to be discussing. It's a fairly narrow focus. So if I can, I can. I've got the slideshow right here. First thing I'd like to point out are a couple clarifications on this opening slide. Those of you with a really good eye for dollar figures and math, and you'll look at my little qualifier on top of dollars and millions. Well, those aren't dollars and millions, those are dollars and thousands of dollars. So decimal points and commas and zeros count an awful lot with money. So in the haste of getting this out and putting the figures together, I kept my millions when really I was talking about thousands on here. So you can take off three zeros on the ends of each one of these for the actual figures. And also for June, the 4 projects that we're referencing are new projects. We have an additional 12 projects in June that you took action on that advanced projects from the year 18-19 to the year 17-18. So we could start those projects a year earlier and get them moving. So this is enabled by SB1 dollars flowing. And as was mentioned yesterday, even though we have not yet started collecting the fees from SB1, we have the fiscal authority to spend that until that is rescinded, if it ever is, which I doubt that it'll ever be overturned because it makes sense what we're doing. In August, you took actions on 32 projects totaling $901 million. And at this meeting, you presumably will be taking action on 90 projects totaling $3.384 billion, all collectively for the SHOP program, roughly $4.7 billion in action. You may notice that that doesn't reach the $5 billion, so I will go into detail. Within these projects that are being advanced, we are targeting the 4 asset classes that the Commission adopted and that we're trying to attain the performance, and that's why there's this focus. 25 of them are bridge projects, and within those 25 projects, there are a total of 66 bridges being fixed. So within an individual project, you may have multiple bridges. So we're trying to be efficient and tackle a lot at once when we do one thing. Under the pavement, 29 projects fixing 1,174 lane miles. There are no decimal or zeros missing off that figure. That's an actual. For culverts and drains, the third category of the 4 asset classes, we're looking at fixing 308 drainage systems. And by drainage systems, some of those could be pumps as well as the culverts. It's moving water so that the highway doesn't move at a later date. And then the ASM elements that were mentioned yesterday as being so important. These are fixing existing elements. This action of putting 2,393 field elements, we're not adding new field elements, we're fixing ones that are not functioning properly. And you'll notice we have a lot of cable that's being replaced, and there are other activities being taken care of as well under the TSM elements. We also have a lot of work, and Mr. Tavares was just up here talking about their work in dealing with the emergencies. They're also accelerating the delivery of their maintenance activities where they're doing projects that don't quite reach the level of a SHOP project where we have a full engineering replacement, upgrading facilities to current standards, to going out and immediately fixing what we have. So on the pavement side, they are fixing 1,400 lane miles that they're accelerating, and then we have another kind of project they can accelerate Still within the SB1 dollars for an additional 257 lane miles. So we're fixing a lot of lane miles out there as rapidly as we can. In addition, and many of you may have noticed, there are wider stripes, very noticeable if you've been by, that are 6 inches wide. That's great for visibility. It's also good for the vehicles that are going to be autonomous and that are looking for lane markers to go in there. And then upgrading the lanes so we can see them. It's been a long time since we've been able to go out and actually go out and do the striping for 16,000 line miles. So we usually talk about lane miles. These are the actual stripes, lines of stripes. So this is the public will be seeing a dramatic improvement of the visibility of their lanes going forward. So total on the maintenance program, we have 98 projects on there. So adding all of this together to in terms of the number of projects we've got here that are going forward, 236 projects at just over $5 billion of activities that are underway in this fiscal year that are getting started due to SB1 that would not have been happening right now. So it's important to point out that the actions that Rick mentioned in terms of the dollar figures, for the 90 projects, we're initiating the environmental phase, the environmental project approval phase. And we'll come back to you in the future for future allocations for subsequent phases on those projects. So the entire $5 billion is not yet allocated. Right now, you're taking the action to allocate the initial phase, and then we'll come back to you at a future date. And we are doing our best to accelerate that project approval and environmental document phase. I'd be pleased to take any questions if you have any, and I'll make sure the next time I'm talking with you, including later today on the ITIP hearing, that my zeros and commas are all aligned with the actual dollars. Yes, sir.
Great report, Bruce. Just a clarification, do I understand that the bot dots are gone? We're not doing those anymore?
That is my understanding. Mr.
Where they're going, right?
Tavares may want to address that since
the only concern I have, forgetting about autonomous vehicles because we're not even close to that yet, I'm concerned about inclement weather, where you can't see the road correctly. Those dots are very helpful when your tire runs over them to tell you what lane you're in.
Exactly.
True. So the bots dots are non-reflective. So we still are leaving the reflective markers on the striping delineation. So those will remain. The bots dots we are removing them. We found that they've become more of a hazard as the larger trucks and the heavier trucks are on our roadways. They're breaking them, and we have flying debris that's hitting.
Are you putting more reflective?
We're putting wider stripe, which is a high reflective. It's called a wet reflective striping on the lane lights.
The reflector.
Yes, we're going to.
What do they call those? They're not bot dots.
No, they're raised reflective markers.
Right. Are you putting more of those in?
No, we're putting the same amount, but the stripe itself now is going to be 6 inches wide instead of 4 inch wide, and it's a higher reflectivity striping.
I'm worried about inclement weather when it's raining really hard.
When it's raining and at night, you're going to be able to see it. It's almost going to be glowing at you.
I'm going to hold you to that.
Okay.
Okay, this is an action item.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Gometti, a second by Commissioner Kehoe. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. Item 84.
Commissioners, item 84 is an action item requesting an allocation of $73 million for 12 projects from the 2016 shop. These projects are delivered and ready for allocation. Commission staff has reviewed all the projects and recommends your approval.
We have a motion by Commissioner Tavaloni, second by Commissioner Dunn. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. Item 85. Rick, you're up again.
Thank you. Item 85 is a request for allocation of $224 million for 190 shop project pre-construction support phases. Please note changes to projects 132, 150, 173, 189, and 190 as noticed on the change list. Commission staff has been through all these projects in detail and recommends your approval.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Tavaloni, a second by Commissioner Kehoe. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. Item 86.
Thank you. Commissioners, item 86 is a request for allocation of one shot project from Proposition 1B funding. The project is in the adopted 2016 shop, now delivered and ready for allocation. Commission staff recommends commission approval.
We have a motion by Commissioner Tavaloni, a second by Commissioner Dunn. Any discussion? All in favor? Anybody opposed? Anybody needing to abstain for the record? Motion carries. Item 87, STIP program. Teresa.
Commissioners, item 87 is an action item. This is a financial allocation request for 3 STIP projects on the state highway system for $8,793,000. There is a correction on the change list for project number 1, that is the project ID. Staff has reviewed these requests and finds it consistent with STIP guidelines in the program. Staff recommends your approval for this item.
So moved.
We have a motion by Commissioner Tavaloni, a second by Commissioner Kehoe. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining for the record? Motion carries. Teresa.
Item 88 is an action item. This is a financial allocation request for 9 locally implemented STIP projects off the state highway system for $3,134,000. Staff has reviewed these requests and finds it consistent with STIP guidelines in the program. Staff recommends your approval.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Dunn, a second by Commissioner Kehoe. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining for the record? Motion carries. Item 89.
Item 89 is an action item. This is a financial allocation request for 1 STIP project in Kern County for $3,942,000. Staff has reviewed this request and finds it consistent with STIP guidelines in the program. Staff recommends your approval.
We have a motion by Commissioner Tavaloni, a second by Commissioner Dunn. Any discussion? All in favor? Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining for the record? Motion carries. Item number 90. Don't go away.
I was like, oh. Commissioners, item 90 is an action item. This is the annual lump sum allocation request from the Public Utilities Commission for the Railroad Grade Crossing Maintenance Program. This is for the fiscal year 2018-19 for $3,750,000. Staff has reviewed this request and finds it consistent with statute, and staff recommends your approval.
So moved.
We have a motion by Commissioner Kehoe, a second by Commissioner Tavaloni. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining for the record? Motion carries. Item 91.
Item 91 is an action item. This is a financial allocation request of $19,900,000 for the construction component of Phase 2 of the Route 238 Corridor Improvement Project in Alameda County. This request is consistent with the local alternative transportation improvement program the Commission adopted in May 2010. Staff recommends your approval.
So moved, thank God.
Okay, we have a motion by Tavaloni, or I'm sorry, Gometti made the motion, and the second was by Tavaloni, so I got that a little backwards. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? For the record, motion carries. Item 92. Reason.
Morning, Commissioners. Tab 92 is an action item to approve the baseline agreement for the Durfee Avenue Grade Separation Project in Los Angeles County. Per Commission action in October 2016, the project was entered into the Highway Rail Crossing Safety Account, also referred to as HRCSA, for $2.706 million. Staff has reviewed the baseline agreement and finds it to be consistent with the 2016 HRCSA guidelines. The staff recommends your approval.
Have a motion by Commissioner Dunn, a second by Commissioner Tavaloni. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. Trade Quarter Improvement Fund, 93.
Yes, Commissioner. Tab 93 is an action item to allocate $3 million of TCIF funds and $15 million of repurposed federal earmarks for the US 101 Marine Sonoma Narrows Project, Segment B2. The Commission approved the adoption of this project into TCIF in January 2017 for $3 million and approved the amendment to the baseline agreement in August 2017. The $3 million in TCIF funds will be used for construction, and the $15 million of the federal funds will be used for both construction, engineering, and construction. Staff has reviewed this allocation request and recommends your approval.
Move staff recommendation.
Can I just ask?
Yeah, okay.
Will the fires impact this, delay it, or change the work, the scope?
No.
Not, based on the latest information that we have, the construction will begin in March 2018.
Okay,
And will end in December 2019.
thank you.
Okay, for the record, we had a motion by Commissioner Tavaloni and a second by, I'm sorry, Gilmetti. I'm looking right at Gilmetti and Colin Tavaloni. I'm sorry, I
All us
apologize.
Italians look alike.
It's this cold, it's gone all the way through. So the motion was by Commissioner Tavaloni, I'm sorry, Gilmetti, and Tavaloni did the second. I have to split you guys up, yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? For the record, motion carries. Item 94.
Commissioners, item 94 is an action item to approve financial allocation of $13,114,000 for 8 ATP project phases. Staff has reviewed these requests. They are consistent with ATP guidelines and the adopted program. Therefore, staff recommends your approval.
Move approval.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Paul and a second by Commissioner Kehoe. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? For the record, motion carries. Item 95.
Commissioners, item 95 is an action item to approve an allocation of $1,831,000 for 2 ATP projects programmed in fiscal year 2019-20. Staff has reviewed these requests. They are consistent with ATP guidelines, the adopted program, and the ATP policy on project amendments, excuse me, and advanced project allocations. Therefore, staff recommends your approval.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Dunn, a second by Commissioner Tavaloni. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? For the record, motion carries. Item 96.
Commissioners, item 96 is an action item. It's contract award time extensions for 9 ATP projects. Staff has reviewed the extension requests in item 96. They're consistent with ATP guidelines, and staff recommends their approval as shown on the yellow time extension table.
We have a motion by Commissioner Tavaloni, a second by Commissioner Dunn. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. Item 97.
Commissioners, item 97 is an action item. This is a 3-month time extension request to award the contract for a locally implemented STIP project in Yolo County. Staff has reviewed this time extension and finds the time extension reasonable. Staff recommends your approval.
We have a motion by Commissioner Tavaloni, a second by Commissioner Dunn. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. Item 98.
Item 98 is an action item. This is a 6-month time extension request to award the contract for a locally implemented STIP project in Monterey County. Staff has reviewed the time extension.
Oh, wait, I had Rick up. Sorry, Teresa, I think you might.
98?
98. We thought you were twins.
Thank you. Commissioners, item 98 is a request to extend the contract award period of 3 SHOP projects. Commission staff has reviewed the request, confirmed with Caltrans, and recommends extension as shown on the yellow extension table.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Kehoe, a second by Commissioner Dunn. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining for the record? Item carries. And last but not least, item 99.
Staff recommends your approval for item 99, Commissioners.
We have a motion by Commissioner Dunn, a second by Commissioner Kehoe. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. Public comment? We have public comment? Seeing no notice of public comment, we would like to close our meeting. Since we're in Modesto, we wanted to recognize one of our former members. Commissioner Lindsay was near and dear to my heart. I first met him on the very first Goods Movement Action Plan, and he was a giant in terms of giving us wonderful insight and his expertise, so we really appreciate. I'm going to ask my fellow Commissioner Paul, who hails from this area, to read a little bit about Commissioner Lindsay.
Thank you, Chairman Inman. We adjourn today's meeting in honor of Kirk Lindsay. See, you're going to make me cry in my first meeting?
I know.
Oh my gosh. I know.
You wouldn't want us to cry.
We adjourn today's meeting in honor of Commissioner Kirk Lindsay, who served on the commission from 2000 until he lost his battle with cancer in 2009. It was impossible to miss Kirk when he walked in the room. Those of you who knew him, he was a tall, large man with a deep booming voice. We used to joke that when we stood next to each other, both of us felt a little bit thinner. He was warm, generous, and honest. He was never afraid to ask a tough question, to peer over his glasses and say, "Am I correct in my understanding, or help me understand?" A fourth-generation Californian, Kirk took enormous pride in the Central Valley, where he founded an agricultural trucking company called Bright Transportation. He raised his family and served his community. Despite his demands of running a company, Kirk found time to coach and mentor students at Beyer High School, where the pool deck is named in his honor. He held leadership roles in the Modesto Chamber of Commerce, Stanislaus Economic Development and Workforce Alliance, the Stanislaus Partners in Education, the California Workforce Development Board, and the California Trucking Association. Kirk brought to the commission a keen understanding of the transportation challenges facing rural as well as critical rural areas, as well as critical working knowledge of California's agricultural economy and freight movement. He was uniquely skilled in integrating transportation concerns with those of economic development, workforce development, and planning for future growth. He was one of those rare individuals who could stand toe-to-toe with the biggest players in business and politics, and always first and foremost, a man who loved his family, served his community, honored his faith. We especially remember him for his counsel, his compassion, and his great sense of humor. His commitment to public service and tireless efforts to stimulate the economy, improve transportation, and expand educational opportunities in the Central Valley and across the state will have a lasting legacy. We're all eternally grateful for his commitment and dedication to service to the Commission and the state of California. We'd like to adjourn this meeting in his memory and acknowledgement of his contribution to transportation, as well as his love and devotion